The power grid has no storage, no battery as you imagine. But those black and white stripes from the 1950s had already reached a physical dead end. They could only hold around 20 characters, too little to identify an engine component. That is why the QR code was born. A quiet surface became a two-dimensional hard drive, able to correct itself even when torn apart. That is why the QR code was born. Meanwhile, fiber optics glass strands thinner than hair are firing light across oceans almost instantly. How did QR defeat the limits of space itself? Meanwhile, and if they are cut, what actually happens? Welcome to Everyday Things Explained. The paradox of speed. You assume satellites are faster because they are in the sky. But light is the fastest tool you have for moving information. But the problem is distance. A geostationary satellite sits about 35,786 kilometers above Earth. To send a message, the signal must travel up, then back down. A round trip of over 70,000 kilometers just to press like. Even at light speed, that creates a delay of roughly 500 milliseconds. Enough for you to feel the lag without knowing why. Fiber optics do not need to climb into the sky. They go straight. Light is trapped inside the glass core through total internal reflection, a nearly perfect light pipe. Latency drops to a few dozen milliseconds, sometimes less. It is like speaking through a tube directly into someone's ear instead of shouting through a speaker placed on the moon. Speed stops being theory, it becomes experience. But speed is only half the story. The real problem lies in the stomach of space. The data-eating machine. You might assume thousands of satellites would outperform a single cable. Reality disagrees. One fiber optic cable can consume more data than an entire fleet of satellites. Satellites are limited by the radio frequency spectrum. A finite resource like lanes on a highway, you cannot add infinite lanes. You can only divide them and compete. Fiber optics use light instead. Not just one color. Dozens, even hundreds of wavelengths travel in parallel inside the same strand. Each wavelength is its own lane. The result, a cable as thin as your finger can transmit tens of terabits per second. That is what happens when you move from radio to optics. A simple analogy. Satellites are trucks stuck on a crowded, pothole-filled road. Fiber optics are high-speed trains running on dedicated tracks. One carries packages, the other carries entire cities. But building those tracks on the ocean floor is not romantic. It is a mechanical nightmare. Hell at the bottom of the ocean. You are protecting a glass strand, thinner than hair, and placing it under pressures that can crush a submarine. The solution? Not one protective layer. A glass core wrapped in waterproof gel, then a copper conductor, then steel reinforcement, then an outer plastic sheath against corrosion. In total, up to 8 layers. Like stuffing a noodle inside a steel pipe and dropping it into a never-ending earthquake. The seafloor is not still. It slides. It vibrates. It moves. Sharks have been recorded biting fiber cables. Not out of hatred for the internet. They mistake electrical signals for prey. But the biggest threat is human. A misplaced anchor can sever a cable stretching thousands of kilometers. And when that happens, the internet does not collapse. It simply slows down, reroutes, congests. Like a city losing a major bridge. But lose multiple bridges at once, everything stops. The politics of cables. Fiber cables do not run randomly. They converge at points called landing stations, where ocean cables surface onto land. Whoever controls these points controls the flow of data. This is not just engineering. It is geopolitics. Imagine your entire city's water supply passing through a single valve in your neighbor's house. Would you sleep well? Nations understand this. They protect, monitor, even compete to route cables in their favor. A war without gunfire, but capable of paralyzing economies. So, if fiber is this powerful, why do satellites still exist? The wireless illusion. Satellites are not useless. They solve problems where cables cannot reach. Remote islands, deserts, war zones. They are the coverage layer. But fiber is the backbone. You live in a wireless world, run by millions of kilometers of wire beneath the ocean. A system that is fragile, cold, and extremely efficient. Now you understand why your internet survives storms. But the next question is more interesting. Why did we once dummy tires into the ocean to save coral and end up creating an ecological disaster?